Lori Vallow Daybell's murder conspiracy trial gets underway with opening statements. What did the so-called Doomsday Mom have to say to the jury? How does she explain the fatal shooting of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow? Doomsday beliefs, life insurance motives, and an overwhelming case against her. She now represents herself in the first of two trials, accused of murder conspiracy. I'm Justin Lum, and we are on the record. Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum here, joined by Special Projects executive producer George Obi. We are on the record, and let's talk about, first off, the prosecution. State of Arizona giving the jury an inside look and a roadmap to everything that they are going to see in this trial. We're talking about cell phone evidence with text messages, emails, body camera footage, and this whole life insurance motive that is being alleged regarding the so-called Doomsday Mom, Lori Vallow Daybell. It was a lot. Trina K has been working on this and had this case for a long time. And it was interesting to see how she laid out that storyline for the jury that has no idea what they're going to see.
Well, I thought it was interesting. She spent the first minute or two talking about this religious aspect to the case, which I know will probably confuse a lot of jurors, even people watching at home, but then quickly got into what the motive was. And then we saw how quickly the first day went into the crime and the crime scene and everything that kind of surrounds that.
Yeah, we got to see from the two witnesses, officers from Chandler PD, body camera footage, their own body camera footage. And I thought it was unique that instead of just playing the whole thing, and I'm comparing to the Idaho trial where they submitted an exhibit, they played the video, they played the audio, and then they would elaborate. But in this case, Trina K would sort of walk the court through the presentation of the body camera footage where you see the demeanor of Alex Cox, Lori Vallow Daybell's late brother, who's the shooter in this case. You see the demeanor of Lori as she comes back after an hour. And important to note, they make it very clear that she's the calm and cool-headed one. But as we've seen in the past, Tylee Ryan, her daughter, is shaken. She is shaken up, and this is before she interviews with police. This is a teenage girl who was involved somehow in this altercation. But again, we only have a storyline and perspective from Lori Vallow Daybell since everyone is dead.
And I think that it'll be interesting to see how the jury picks up on this when there is going to be some kind of key elements going to be left out that the jury's going to have to pick up on and what they're seeing. It's one thing to to hear what both of these detectives say and what other witnesses will say about this whole scene, but they're going to only see a lot of what was on police body camera and how much they absorb that when it comes to demeanor, the look in his eyes, the look in, and when I'm talking about Alex, the look in her eyes and Lori, even Tylee. Again, you see her on the body camera when
She's
Lori and
scared.
them pull up. Yeah.
Yeah, and Trina K also does this in her opening statements. We know the religious aspect is a lot, and the dark spirits allegedly possessing Charles's body. She sprinkles that in, but to start this with her witnesses, to start this case presentation, it's the nuts and bolts. Let's get you to July 11, 2019 with the nuts and bolts. Here's what happened. And she really gets into the lack of physical evidence that would suggest there was a big fight, where there was furniture torn apart, blood everywhere. We don't have a lot of blood everywhere. We don't even have blood on a weapon. We have a 1-inch cut on Alex Cox's head. And that was supposed to be from a baseball bat swung by his brother-in-law, who was a former baseball player. And I think the jury, I don't think that's hard to see, is like, hey, what's up with that? Let's take a listen to Trina K's opening statements and how she finished it off.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case is going to show you that Lori Vallow Daybell conspired with her brother, Alex Cox, to kill her husband, Charles Vallow. When Charles let Lori know he was coming into town, she quickly got the pieces into place. Alex came to her house with a gun. Lori created the way to keep Charles inside the house so that Alex and she could be like Nephi. To kill Charles Vallow to better at least her life so she could be with Chad and she could live off that life insurance policy. As we go through this trial, you will see photos of Charles's injury, photos of the crime scene, and hear testimony that will prove that this was not self-defense. As we go through this trial, you'll be provided with phone calls, emails, text messages, and hear testimony that lays out the motive for this murder. money, and Chad Daybell. You will see text messages and hear from people who Lori trusted and who were later pushed away, people who really don't want to be part of this trial, but were pulled into it by this defendant and her desire to get rid of Charles to be with Chad. People who heard Lori for months saying Charles was gone, possessed. People who will establish that this murder was premeditated. You will hear text messages from July 9th by Lori to her brother, Alex Cox, that he had to stay near her, that it was all coming to a head, and she would be like Nephi, and so would he. A justified killing, just like the prophet. And later, the text message to Chad where she told him that Charles changed the life insurance policy before they got rid of Ned. A confession by Lori of how religion and money were twisted to justify Charles's murder. At the end of this trial, the state will come to you and ask you to hold the defendant responsible for the death of Charles Vallow and find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Thank you.
Now, what we had all been waiting for, opening statements by Lori Vallow Daybell, representing herself for the very first time. This would be the first chance at opening statements for her because we expect her to get another one in trial number 2. And I thought that there would be more of a stronger narrative for the self-defense. We got a little bit of emotion. I don't know if the jury bought that, but she started everything the evidence will show. She started every statement with the evidence will show this. She even goes back to, she does like a self-biography on being a mom and raising her kids, her job status, Charles Vallow's job status, life insurance, and how it's normal for them to be very active and aware of life insurance policies.
I think it's, as you're going to find out, I think from the very beginning, going to be difficult for her to disprove any of the physical evidence that was at the scene. I think she's almost subtly acknowledging that and realizing, look, I need to take a different approach because the evidence is what it is. But again, they've set up the fact that the motive is religion and money. Right? So now she's got to try and pivot with her opening arguments about the physical evidence and maybe what police did or did not do correctly at the scene.
Was she really crying? Did she really need the tissue? It sounded like she did. She got emotional and sounded like when she was describing Tylee Ryan running through the house and Charles Vallow running through the house and this bat, and then all of them running out of the house to get in the car, and JJ's trying to get out of the car seat. They don't even have shoes on, and that's why they have to go to Walgreens. She's describing a very scary situation and also telling the jury that this man, her husband, her estranged husband at the time, was sending threatening text messages and getting into arguments that even got physical with his stepdaughter, Tylee Ryan, and that this relationship had gone so bad that she couldn't even have him stay on the night of July 10th and needed to book a hotel for him the day before he was supposed to pick up JJ for school. Let's listen to what Lori Vallow Daybell had to say in her opening statement.
The evidence will show that Tylee was 3 years old when Charles and I got married, and that when she became a teenager, the relationship between Tylee and her stepfather, Charles, became so difficult that Tylee and Charles had to seek a therapist, a family therapist, to stop them from fighting. The evidence will show that together, Charles and Tylee met with this therapist after we moved back to the mainland in 2017. The evidence will show that in April of 2018, Tylee's biological father passed away from a heart attack. And at that time, Charles called Social Security and made an appointment at the Social Security office.
I'm going to object to hearsay.
Sustain.
It will show that we did get Social Security for Tylee for her deceased father until she was 18 years old, and she was 15 years old at the time. The evidence will show that Charles and Tylee's fighting increased greatly in January of 2019 when Charles and I temporarily separated. The evidence will show that several people witnessed these terrible arguments between Tylee and Charles that increased to physical in 2019. Charles and Tylee had major increasing arguments, 2 in February of 2019, 1 of March in 2019, which was captured on video, 1 in May of 2019, 1 in June of 2019, and then the worst of all in July 2019. The evidence will show that in March of 2019, Charles pulled JJ out of his special school and moved him to Houston, Texas, while we were temporarily separated. Tylee and I then joined Charles and JJ in Texas in April 2019 to reconcile. The evidence will show that JJ was diagnosed with severe autism when he was 3 years old.
So we know the state intends to call 21 witnesses, 10 of them being Chandler PD, law enforcement. We got 2 witnesses today, Erwin Wisbicki, they call him Wiz, and then Robert Krautheim, who's a retired Chandler PD officer. But these are the first 2 that arrived to the scene. So it makes sense that Trina K brings them up, what they saw, how everyone reacted, putting up the crime scene tape, their protocol and all of that, and specifically Lori Vallow and Alex Cox's demeanor. They say that they really didn't, it was very casual. And we see that on the body cam footage, like we just mentioned, Lori Vallow's demeanor. It just didn't seem like there was any worry in the world. And I think it's very important that Kay put this out.
It was. And we saw, as you mentioned, how emotional Lori got in her opening statements. Now you have these 2 detectives who are describing Lori and showing her on body camera, completely different person. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about Lori that was at the scene moments after her brother just shot and killed her husband. She's aware of this. So it's important, I think, that the jury would be able to pick up on you're emotional now 4 or 5 years later, but 45 minutes to an hour after this all happened, I didn't see any tears.
An hour, right?
Yeah.
Like, she just didn't have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
She was answering questions, and they didn't even tell her straight off, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but your husband, he's been shot and killed. And we're talking to your brother. He's the one who's responsible, but, you know, he says they got into a fight, or I think he may need medical attention because he got hit in the head with a bat. He refuses medical attention, Alex Cox does, and they go to the police department, and still it's sort of the same cool, calm, collected demeanor. The only one who we know is visibly shaken up is Tylee Ryan. So, I don't know. This was just, I think, very telling for the jury, and they don't even know about the Idaho case. They don't know about how she acts poolside in Kauai. They don't know how she acts as she's being confronted at a resort with Chad Daybell. But as we know, this is the MO of Lori Vallow Daybell, to come off as cold, aloof, but also yet charming in a way to these officers.
And whether or not she understands that the jury that may not know about all of that stuff, it's going to be interesting. She's now has the task of trying to maybe shed, you know, that reputation that
Fresh
she's
start.
already, yes, and figure out, all right, you know, how do I convince them that I was a loving wife and a mother, right? How do I kind of regain some of that to, you know, jury pool that may not be aware, like we are, of who she is and how she's carried herself in the last 5 years.
So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to Trina K direct exam with Officer Krautheim about the demeanor. And then right after that, you're going to hear Lori get her chance at cross-examining the same officer about how she acted on camera and at the scene.
The scene itself, was it chaotic?
No.
Were people running around screaming?
No.
Were people running in and out of the front door?
No.
So were the officers calm?
It was just me and another officer.
Were you calm?
Yes,
Was the other officer calm?
he was.
Were the detectives calm?
They were.
Was the fire department calm?
I didn't interact with them very much. I couldn't answer that.
Your friend the Wiz was calm?
Yes, the other officer, yes.
So when I arrived at the scene, things were pretty calm.
Is that a question?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were calm.
No, I'm saying when I arrived at the scene itself was calm environment.
It was.
Okay. So if I would have been hysterical, that would have been more out of character than if I was calm when everybody else was being calm. Isn't that correct?
Speculation.
Sustain.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, did you know that the deceased person in the house was her husband?
I did.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, did you ask her whether or not the individual inside her husband lived there?
I did not ask her that.
Can you describe for us Lori Vallow's demeanor as you were interacting with her?
Calm, nonchalant, just kind of a matter of fact, just talking to me as I'm talking to you now.
Did she ever ask you how her brother was doing?
No.
Did she ever ask you if her brother needed medical attention from being hit by a bat?
No.
Did she ever ask you why there were so many police cars around the neighborhood?
No.
Did she ask you why there was a fire truck parked in front of her house?
No.
So, other than gathering basic information, did you really talk to her about anything else?
No.
So there you have Lori Vallow Daybell getting a couple chances at cross-examining witnesses. She's going to get another chance on day 2, Tuesday morning, with Chandler Fire, a witness who arrived to the scene and did CPR on Charles Vallow and says no one seemed to have done anything. There were no signs of CPR done, and Charles Vallow had been deceased for some time. It may be very dry testimony, but it's so important for the jury to see what was done right after the shooting, what was not done.
Yeah, and it's a basis to establish, look, how concerned were they? You know, how kind of shocked were they? Again, if you're a normal person, you get into a fight with somebody and there's a shooting, you're going to be pretty shaken. There were a lot of questions. What was Alex's demeanor? And there were, you know, at this point, this is where we start getting into the objection phase of the trial, and where the state now goes after Lori when they realize she's not she's not a defense attorney. She's not accustomed to this. She made a lot of mistakes. But again,
A lot of objections.
yes, and they're going to pick up on this when the fact that, you know, what was their CPR performed? How kind of, you know, how nervous, how, how emotionally scarred were they, or was Alex, knowing that he just shot a human, and that human has been laying on the floor for a long period of time.
Almost an hour. And here's the thing that the jury is not supposed to, because they've answered this in jury selection, they can't hold it against her that she's pro se. She has a lack of experience. Obviously, they're going to evaluate her arguments, but they can't be biased against her either just because she doesn't have the same experience that Trina K has. And so you see the guidance between not just K in the way of objections, but the judge in saying, hey, you have to ask a question. And in this circumstance, you cannot ask the witness to testify in a way that he gives an answer related to your dead brother. We have already ruled everything that Alex Cox has said is hearsay. He's a co-conspirator.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So, and we haven't seen objections from Lori Vallow Daybell. She just doesn't know when to sort of jump in and react, even though she has asked a lot of questions in cross-exam.
And we may see that change as we move forward, where she may go, okay, when can I object? When do I need to find those objectable moments? Again, are they kind of poking her? Does she need to go to them? It's got to be real quick, because you know it's
moving. It's
it
literally
is.
nonstop.
Yes.
The questioning in direct exam.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an interesting day one so far. We're going to make sure that we give you guys a daily recap on the record each night after trial has streamed. Make sure you stay with us, because we've got experts, legal experts, throughout the day, Monday through Thursday, as this trial goes on. We'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of trial and see who is the next witness to take the stand, and see how Vallow Daybell continues to conduct herself as her own attorney. For Fox 10 Investigates, I'm Justin Lum. He's George Obie. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. We'll see you soon.